subject of the debate is contribution of Muslims to community, so I look forward to hearing this debate. Dr. Zubir Ahmed.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It is Ramadan 2025, or 1446 after Hijri, as many Muslims know it. It's the first time observing after being elected to this place as the Member of Parliament for Glasgow South West. As the only minority ethnic and Muslim MP representing a Scottish Westminster constituency, I do feel the sense of a unique responsibility to espouse the role that Muslims play in our country positively. British Muslims donate £1.79 billion a year to charitable causes, 4 times more than the national average, and volunteer time worth £622 million a year. In that regard, I would like to place my thanks to the many Islamic charities that are active in my constituency, including Islamic Relief, who diligently work not only on international but increasingly on local causes. Businesses owned by Muslims contribute £25 billion a year to the British economy, and this is notwithstanding the fact that the UK is a world leader in Islamic finance, holding 85% of the European Islamic finance banking sector. And while, like every community, there are challenges of inequality, vast strides have been made in education and the participation of Muslim women in society. There has been a notable increase in educational attainment, with 32.3% of Muslims holding degree-level qualifications in 2021, compared with only 24% in 2011. And this is largely driven, Madam Deputy Speaker, by women coming into higher education, something that I think we can wholeheartedly welcome. So the story of Muslims is intricately woven into our society. It is apparent in every walk of life and is one worthy of celebration. Most prominently, perhaps, in our NHS, where I worked as a full-time surgeon prior to my election to this place. That footprint was most palpable during the COVID pandemic, when many served on the front line, when they knew that they were disproportionately at higher risk of harm. And many made the ultimate sacrifice, with Muslim doctors, Alfa Saoudu, Amgad Al-Hawrani, Adil Tayyar and Habib Zaidi, who had their ancestry in Africa, Pakistan and the Middle East, dying of COVID in the course of their clinical duties. But this should not be a surprise, because despite recent rhetoric, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is important to place on record that the footprint of Muslims on the British Isles, and indeed serving in British interests, has been long and enduring, and at times existential to our country. At least 2.5 million Muslim soldiers and labourers are reported to have fought with the Allied forces in the First World War, and 5.5 million in the Second World War. Nearly 1.5 million Muslims were killed in action. And this does not include the many Muslims serving in other roles during the war, including my grandfather, Imam Muhammad, who was interred by the Japanese while serving as a constable in the Royal Hong Kong Police Force during the Second World War. In more recent times, of course, that sense of service has manifested in the election of Muslim MPs to this place. And it would be remiss of me, Madam Deputy Speaker, not to mention your achievements as the first ever Muslim minister serving in a government, and now, of course, the first ever Muslim Deputy Speaker. But despite this contribution, the shared history, the shared values, it is unfortunately a tumultuous time for many British Muslims. 6,000 plus anti-Muslim hate incidents have been reported in the last year. In my own social media timeline, I see a sense of this increase, an increasing diatribe of hatred directed at me, not so much anymore because of the colour of my skin, as it was when I was younger, but my religion. Many, despite me being born here and serving the NHS here, questioning my place in Parliament because they do not deem enough generations of my family to have lived here for me to be British enough to serve in this place. Now, this rhetoric that we see online, I think, has the ability surreptitiously to desensitise all of us. And that desensitisation is then finding its way to places such as the dinner table, where it is becoming an increasingly acceptable form of conversation to indulge in anti-Muslim rhetoric. As it does so on that dinner table, on Muslim dinner tables across the country, they are questioning their place in this society. This is a trend that should worry us all, Madam Deputy Speaker, because it undermines the fabric of our society, our cohesion, our identity as a country. And we know from other forms of hatred that what starts with anti-Semitism or anti-Muslim hatred rarely stops there. It has a common... As I was saying, Madam Deputy Speaker, this is a trend that should worry us all because of the nature of its undermining. And we know that kind of hatred of anti-Muslim rhetoric does not stop with Muslims. It has a common denominator: to divide, to fragment the bonds that have been forged over years, and indeed is a lightning rod to violence and civil disorder. This coming Saturday is a reminder of where that hatred leads if left unchecked. It is the 6th anniversary of the Christchurch mosque shooting in New Zealand. On the 15th of March 2019, 51 innocent lives were tragically taken in that act of hatred, the youngest being just 3 years old. This sickening attack on those attending Friday prayers was a dark day. But in that darkness came the light of the response by the now former New Zealand Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern. She enveloped the Muslim community in empathy, inclusiveness and acceptance in a way that Muslims living in the West had rarely experienced and in a way that will never be forgotten. I remember, Madam Deputy Speaker, the following day, coming out of the operating theatre, being driven to tears by her compassion. She validated my existence as a Muslim in the West in a way at that time that no one in this country could have managed, and for that, Muslims far and wide will hold her in a special place in our hearts. But we must not mistake compassion for weakness. In compassion, there is often strength, and perhaps an even clearer sense of vision of the future, and a bravery to confront the difficult issues, to have the difficult conversations across communities, but most importantly, within. And we saw that sense of compassion and bravery in our country last year, in our Prime Minister, who acted so decisively during the riots to protect mosques, to protect those at risk of violent attack, to mobilise quickly and effectively the state against anarchy. He attended the big iftar at Westminster Hall, the first time it has ever been held there this year, and tonight he is holding an iftar at Downing Street too.
Would the Honourable Member give way?
I would. It is a clear indication with the Prime Minister's actions that I've outlined that this Labour government under this Prime Minister values and shares bread with all communities and is a friend of the Muslim community. I thank also in this regard my right honourable friend, the member for Ilford North, for his tireless efforts over the last decade in tackling anti-Muslim hatred, and he is also a true friend of Muslims across this country. When such hatred takes root in our society, Madam Deputy Speaker, it does diminish us all. That is why I am glad the Deputy Prime Minister is also taking action, and perhaps the Minister might be kind enough to outline some of the detail around the new group set up by his department to tackle anti-Muslim hatred in this country once and for all, led by Dominic Grieve, KC, which is of course welcomed. The Minister will know that this is not just an issue for Muslims, it speaks to a wider issue of social cohesion. The Cannes Review on social cohesion in March 2024 argued that social cohesion is not just about protecting the democratic norms of our country, it has wide-reaching benefits for society as a whole, from helping achieve sustainable economic growth to reducing the threats of terrorism and hate crime, increasing societal resilience to shocks such as pandemics, improving public health, increasing volunteering and strengthening communities, social cohesion and a wide range of adjacent policy areas I know that this government takes very seriously. Madam Deputy Speaker, I believe recent events around the world demonstrate that we are at an inflection point in our country. We can roll over to the easy answer to the scapegoating of our community, or conversely, indeed, avoid, as has been done in the past, the difficult conversation that sometimes needs to be had within communities. Neither of these attitudes serves any of us well. We should call out hatred when we see it online, on dinner tables, in changing rooms, in public spaces. But in a pluralistic British society, we should also be able to issue challenge to communities when we see failings. I am proud to be an MP on this side of the House because I believe it is only this government that can achieve this. Many communities, with their own separate traditions, but still able to coalesce naturally into one British identity. Thank you.